Do research papers have you feeling overwhelmed? If so, you're not alone. Research papers can be a major stressor for tons of students, but they don't have to be. That's why I created my course, How to Write Better Research Papers. And if you keep watching, in about 30 seconds, you'll see a free 5-minute preview of the opening module. If you like what you see and decide to get the full course, you'll receive 4.5 hours of instructional videos, helpful templates and writing samples, and access to interactive discussion boards where you can get your questions answered. You get all of this for just $19.99. And the best part is, I offer a 7-day money-back guarantee, meaning that if you're not fully satisfied with the content after purchase, you can request a full refund, no questions asked. You really have nothing to lose. Now let's go ahead and get into that free preview. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get into the content for our first module, the basics of academic writing. And I want to start out with some definitions. And these definitions may seem obvious. It may seem like, why are we even talking about this? But it is important to make sure that as we're starting out, that when I use terminology, we're all understanding the same thing. And so there's two terms that I want to define really quickly. The first one is academic writing. When we talk about academic writing, because this is, of course, the basics of academic writing module, academic writing we're going to define as a formal style of writing used in universities and scholarly publications. A formal style of writing used in universities and scholarly publications. The reason why I want to highlight this is because academic writing, when we use that term, it doesn't mean all writing that you could potentially do in the course of your academic endeavors, right? When you're in college or even in high school, you may have some creative writing classes where you're writing in a more creative style. You may have essays that you need to write for scholarships that are more of a personal story type of style, narrative essays, they would be called. There's lots of different types of writing that you could do in the course of your academic endeavors that don't fall under the umbrella of academic writing. So when I use the term academic writing, and when we talk about academic writing, we're talking about a very specific style of writing that is formal and that is used for the purpose of either universities or scholarly publications. The second term that I want to define here is research papers, because obviously this is the module on academic writing, basics of academic writing, but the entire course is focused on research papers. So we're going to define a research paper as a piece of academic writing that provides analysis, interpretation, and argument based on in-depth, independent research. And the three kind of aspects of this definition that I really want to highlight are analysis, interpretation, and argument. When we talk about research papers are not merely summarizing information. When you start out in school at kindergarten and onward, you generally in the very beginning, your opinion doesn't have a whole lot of weight, right? Because you don't know a whole lot yet. But the further you go along, the more your opinion starts to matter. And so in a research paper, there should be your own analysis, interpretation, and argumentation taking place. It shouldn't just be summarizing someone else's ideas or regurgitating information. That is not the purpose of a research paper. There are three important things that you should consider whenever you're writing in general. And we're going to talk about these specifically through the framework of thinking about academic writing and research papers. The first one is the one that is probably the most obvious topic, right? Now, I say this is the most obvious, but it is an area where I do see mistakes as a teacher. As I'm reading people's essays and research papers, it is not entirely uncommon to see pieces of writing where the topic could just kind of jumps all over the place. It is important that when you're sitting down to write something, that you are laser lock focused on whatever your topic is, that you're not straying from it, that you're not going off course. And generally speaking, a more narrow topic is better than a broader topic. That's kind of getting into a quick preview of our module on the writing process later on. But topic is the first thing that you got to consider when you're sitting down to write anything. Second thing that you got to consider is purpose. Now, the purpose of your writing is as important as the topic. And an example that I like to use would be, let's talk about movies, for example, for a second. Let's say that you are writing a review about a movie and
you're a movie critic, and so you're writing your review, you probably have a very different purpose than if you are the creator of that movie that's trying to write something to get people to go see the movie, right? The first one, the movie critic who's writing, is writing with the purpose of maybe pointing out the flaws in the movie, critiquing the movie, or maybe just trying to get clickbait so that people will want to click into it, what he has to say, or she. Whereas the person who is the actual maker of the movie, they're probably going to be writing with the purpose of wanting to sell you something. And so they're probably going to highlight the good parts of the movie and the exciting parts of the movie, make it sound great. Whereas the movie critic may not. The purpose of your writing is very important. Two people can be writing about the same topic, as in our last example, but end up with very different final products if their purpose is not the same. If we go back to our definition of research papers, you'll note that the purpose of a research paper always involves forming an argument. It said in the definition that a research paper should provide analysis, interpretation, and argument. And so you want to keep that in mind with research papers, is that our purpose is very, very much so centered on the idea of forming argument. And lastly, audience. And audience is something that, just like purpose, plays a big role in how a final product gets written. If I am writing about the risks of smoking, that's going to look very different if I'm writing for an elementary school student, like that age demographic, or if I'm writing for adults, right? The audience is going to play a big difference. And that's a very simple example. But when we come back to the idea of academic writing and research papers, the audience that we want to have in mind is a scholarly audience. We want to have an audience in mind of scholars in the field that we are writing about. That is the audience that we want to have in mind. And that's going to affect how we write. So three important things to consider when writing a research paper: topic, purpose, and audience. Moving on, there's three parts of an essay. And you may be surprised to see the word essay here, because obviously this is a course about research papers, not essays. But the principles of essay writing and the principles of writing a research paper are very similar. Research papers are really different from essays in just two areas. One, they're longer, and two, they involve more research. That's it. Other than that, your research papers are going to look pretty much the same as an argument essay, but longer and with more research behind it. And so the three parts of a research paper or an essay are the introduction, body, and the conclusion. And this, again, may seem pretty elementary, pretty basic, but it's important just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. The body is really what's going to vary in length, depending on how long of a paper you are writing. Introduction pretty much is always going to be one paragraph. Conclusion is pretty much always going to be one paragraph. The body is what is really going to vary in length as you're writing. So with those kind of introductory concepts out of the way, we're going to turn our attention now to a sample research paper. There's a research paper, and I'm going to actually switch over to my screen share here.
Unfortunately, if you want to keep watching, you're going to have to purchase the full course for $19.99. But like I said before, I offer a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you really have nothing to lose. Go ahead, join me on this journey, and get ready to wow your professors.